All right, guys, this is for the Wahl 5-star detailer, but this will apply to other 5-star products as well, like the trimmer and so forth. But I have a unit. It's probably 2 years old, and just recently it broke. Started acting weird. You know, checked blades, everything's fine there. And while I was inspecting it, I noticed that the case broke. So this is the old style case, and I wanted to show you a couple items. Let me find something as a pointing stick that's going to show up quite well. We'll use a skewer. All right, so this is the old style, and trying to do this in the light where you can see. But there's some major differences. One is this is an intentional insulator. It goes between the two connectors for power that comes into the board. I'll show you that in a minute. In addition, there's some slight changes down here in what is the strain relief. That's the rubber piece on the cord that plugs in here. There's a different shape to that. Aside from that, there's not much change. This piece has changed, and then of course this piece has changed in here for where the wire, the 120 volt power comes in. I wanted to point those out because it's not really discussed. Primarily what you're going to see in the discussion about what's changed is what's happening up here where the actual blade, where the blade connects. So if we look here, on these old units, there were two metal stakes or set screws that fit in these holes. One is missing here. I don't know if you can see that. It's probably pretty terrible lighting, but let me get in. Let me see if I can get in here a sec. Okay, so that these just float. They can pop out. You can see there I'm moving it in and out and so forth. They're used to screw on the blade, and they're also used with the spring to provide a bit of tension. But so you may end up, what can happen sometimes is they'll crack around this screw post, or, and probably most common, is this little plastic piece right in here. I don't know if you can see that. Let me see if I can get a good picture here just to make sure. Let me see. I can't even tell. Anyway, if you can see that, it's a plastic post. And that plastic post in the center is what hangs the spring and provides tension. And on this one, you can see that it's snapped off. And so once you stop providing tension on the blade will chatter, and it's not good. So when you buy a replacement, you might be able to find this replacement online. An exact, this exact item. However, what you're going to find is that you're gonna end up with the same issue at some point, right? This plastic is real thin in here. You can see for where the posts come through, there's very thin plastic in there. And of course, where the spring, right, it has tension on it all the time. It's gonna snap. So when you get a replacement, what you're going to find is this. You'll notice the difference here where they've added some additional protection between where the power comes in. They've also added some additional support for, this is essentially the wiring area. I believe this is so that the wires can't sneak out and get in the way of the screws, and you can damage the screws and so forth. So, a little bit of safety there. Plus, any additional plastic like this is going to, it's going to help, support and not crack. The colors are different. Now, I can't be 100% certain that this is a Wahl clipper, but it has the exact same Wahl details on the back. It includes the UL certification from Wahl, and it is upgraded. You can't see this, but this is the old style marking. from UL, but the new badge is a certified marking. So this does look like a new version, but you'll notice in the picture here, right, the new version is much lighter. That may be because this isn't technically spec'd out for the 5-star detailer, but color is color. Functionally, it doesn't matter. The big change here is what's happening in this area. You'll notice that there's no longer this post here, or that plastic lip for where the spring connects. Instead, you just have the holes. And I'll show you why this is important in a second. So this is the new piece that replaces those individual stakes for where the screws for the blade attach. I don't know if you can see that there. It's all one casted piece. And where the spring connects, which is right here at the top, that is this right here where the spring connects is now casted. And so obviously, even though there's pressure on it, it's not going to fail. So wanted to show real quick how to put this together. I mean, it's pretty simple compared to the other one. On the other one, you had to be, actually, and I'll show you on that too. On this, what you have, the only thing you need to be careful of is that on these stakes, I don't know if you can see that real well, but on this screw, the screw piece at the very, on one edge is going to be a little divot, and that needs to go up. That needs to go towards the top. Other than that, the assembly here is pretty similar. So on this, with the new version, you simply put this casted piece in. Here's what the spring looks like. Now what's important here is on the spring there's 2 long arms, right? And then on the other side of it here is, if I can turn it this way and you can see, on the other side is just a short piece. This short piece goes down, when you're looking at it in this way, it goes down, and that short piece hooks into, let me see if I can get a good image here. But that short piece hooks in behind this little stake, right? Now on that old version, this is plastic and it breaks off, which is what happened to my unit. But that's how it goes. Now, one of the things to pay attention to, I'm not sure it's going to be clear here, but when you look at it, these spring arms have a slight bend at the end, at the long side, and those should be pointing up. So if you're holding this down, those little stake pieces should be pointing up, and that's because they go on to hold they hold tension on the blade while it's moving. So now what we'll do is I'll go and show you, you need to be cautious when you put this back together with respect to this new stuff in the middle here. And I'll show you what you need to be aware of when you're putting this together. So if you're not familiar with what the internals of what a trimmer looks like, it's pretty simple, right? There's a small circuit board. Okay, so well, let's start at the early spot. The first thing you have, of course, is your input power. It's coming directly from the cord, and that means these 2 long stakes here, if you can see them, those 2 long stakes are 120 volt wall power, right, coming straight out of your wall. And that is what they have modified on this. So previously it was just a single piece of plastic, and on the new variant what they've done is they've added a bit more meat here. So I got to make sure I'm focused here. Give me a second. Okay. So you can see there they've added, it kind of looks like an upside down Y shape, but that is going to sit between these 2 stakes to ensure that you don't have power, that those have no chance of touching. Now, the way this goes together is the motor goes in and it sits in there, and you'll notice that the base of that motor, and there's actually a bearing back in here under this black cover, but that sits in there and comes all the way up to this divider. divider in here. And so now that we've got that in place, what you need to be cautious of is when you put this in, right, first we're going to stick in the what's called the strain relief, right? That's this, it's the big chunk back here that's on this, that just is there so you can't rip the cord out. But what you do now is you just need to be cautious as we push this down, right? Inside of here is that Y, and you just need to make sure that these 120 volt stakes that are here coming out of the board, that they go over on either side of that Y shape. All right, so I don't know if you can see that down in there all that well. So here's the stake on the neutral side, that's the white wire, and over here the stake on the black wire, which is the hot. Now the layout's a bit different, so where the wires need to go changes slightly, so you might have to play around with this. You'll notice that they sit proud, right? I do not believe there is enough room to get these wires to loop out. Actually, there might be. Let me play around with this a minute. Okay, so I thought maybe that there was enough room. You're probably not going to be able to see it here with the board in place, but down here there's a notch in this new piece that's connected to the strain relief port, and then there's a notch here. And I thought maybe that the main power wires were supposed to come through here. And maybe they do on the new ones, but on this one, they're not long enough, and so it doesn't work. But what you need to be cautious of is as you're pushing this in, what I would recommend is take something not metal or sharp, because you don't want to damage the insulation on the wires, but just use it to get those wires down slightly, right? Remember, I'm coming from the old unit, and so how they sit in here is different, okay? How they sit in the in the case is different, so you're going to have to manipulate them a bit. Just be cautious. Make sure you don't pinch that insulation. Okay. Now we're going to come back up here in the assembly process, and we're going to make sure that our spring is in place, and it is. Like right now, there's no tension on it because the top's not assembled. But what we're going to do now is we're going to assemble the top. I will point out, you'll notice the power switch that's down here. It looks a whole lot different right now, and that's because it has a cover on it. Okay, so now we're going to assemble the top. Again, this is a 5-star detailer, so it's got the cute little wrapping. This might fall out while you're playing around. It's just a rubber cover, but this goes over the switch. Okay, now the thing to look at, I don't know if you can see it, but it has a thin section and a long section. What you want to do when you put this back in here is make sure that the long section is against or with the width of the area that, well, and that's dark. I don't know if you can see that or not. But the point is that the long section should be in line with the length or the width of the trimmers itself. And that's all you need to do. Now for assembly from here, all you need to do, and that plastic is going to have a memory that it hangs in one direction. You don't have to, but what I do is I point the little angle in the same angle that the unit is in when it's off, right? So I'm going to turn this over, but you can see it kind of cants that way a little bit, and so when I put these together, they're aligned. All right, so to put it together, you just slip that switch into that notch, and you need to come up a little bit. Right now we're just paying attention right here, probably in some terrible lighting, but we're paying attention right there where where your strain relief is at, and now we're together. Okay, you'll notice at the top I have not put this together yet. It still has a gap in there right here. Okay, now if you close this all the way up, you can pull it slightly and it'll open back up. But what we're going to do now is we're going to install, I forgot what this is called, like blade guide. But essentially, this is the piece that connects the motor, right? That piece in there just spins in a circle right here, spins in a circle. And this piece that we're getting ready to put on, this is what will go back and forth to move the blade. And this is what you're going to put tension on the, or this is what the spring is tensioning against. Now, when I bought my new piece, I bought a whole kit. I will point out on the new piece I bought, it's gray. The old piece is white. It's probably hard to see here. But functionally, they're the same. I see no differences other than color. I don't know if maybe they changed their plastic for some reason or went to maybe glass reinforced fiber plastic for longevity. Doesn't matter. The thing that we're going to pay attention to here is this has two sides. Okay, so let's point out its orientation. So on one side, it has the top, and it has these little teeth on it right here, right? And this is going to clip in a specific spot under the top piece, right? I'll show you that in a minute. And then if we look at that same side, right? So we're looking at that side with those teeth. You'll see there's these little V grooves on each side, and that is where the spring needs to sit, okay? So I'm going to take it in this orientation. I'm just going to simply turn it around, okay? So that's what it looks like. And the way that this goes in here is like this, right? I'm looking at the back. You can see the springs here. And what you want to do is you want to put this in a position. Now let's see if I can hold this in place. And if you see, those springs are sitting in those V notches, okay? Now the next critical thing, and it's going to be hard to see because the piece it goes under is black, but those teeth that you can see down in here, I don't know how well you can see those, but the teeth that are in there, there's a lip under here. It's in black plastic, so it's hard to see, but you've got to get that under the lip, okay? And you can't do it while the case is completely together. So all you got to do is just give a little pull on the case, and just be advised that that tension, or I'm sorry, be advised that you're gonna be pushing against that, right? Because you're putting pressure on that spring, and you can see as I push this, we get some feedback. Okay, it will float around a little bit. It's not going to be 100% in place. That's just the way it is. But now, in its current condition, right, we can inspect here and see that the springs are in the proper locations. And now what we do is we put the blade on it. Yeah. Actually, I got ahead of myself. Before we put the blade on, at this stage, you can go ahead and screw the case in. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right, so this is pretty simple. Number one screwdriver, right? Don't use power tools unless you have them choked down a whole lot, because you will shatter this plastic. All right, and we're just going to tighten everything up. I didn't go through it, but there is a magnet that's in the top. You can't obviously see it from once the case is closed up. If you're taking yours apart, the motor actually will stick to that a little bit, and you will notice it. I'm noticing now as I go back together that I have a slight deviation at the bottom here, that we're not completely together. All right, and it looks like it's just some pressure. Also, I did not include the clip. I don't know if you use yours. A lot of people don't. All right, but this can get a little tricky now. I gotta undo this other screw a little bit. But what you can do, just be cautious, and you can put a little bit of pressure in here. But what we're talking about is this, right? The little hangy clip. If you pull on this to force it into the other side, it will bend, so don't do that. All right, let's see. I gotta give it a little bit of, I think I have these too tight up front where it's not gonna wanna open up at all. But we'll just loosen those a touch. Just be cautious when you do this. You need to inspect on the other side. But essentially, I've just split it open just a tad. You can see there's just a little bit of daylight in there, and then this just fits. Just fits up in here. Oops, and there goes the screw. think we got it there. No? Let me see what we got. Where are we at? There's that one. There's that one. Okay. All right, now that I put that back together, give it a good squeeze on the top and the bottom. What I want to do is just inspect that this is in good order at the top. Right, as you have that tension off, you're messing with the tension in that spring and it can move. But my spring arms are in the right spot on the motor assembly follower. I'm not sure what that part's actually called, but whatever. You get my point, the white piece here, or the new gray piece if that's what you have. I'm not using it, the new one. I'll keep it for another day. All right, so now that we're back together completely, I'm going to put the screws back in, and we'll just go ahead and tighten these up like so. Oh, I'm hitting the camera. Hopefully no one has vertigo. I'm working over the top of the camera, so hopefully you guys can see everything here. But all right, so we'll just make sure everything's just hand tight. You don't have to get crazy, all right, but you want to make sure everything's tight. Okay, and that's it. Now it's back together. Now if you need to replace your blade, you don't have to do all this, right? And that's the intention here, is that all of this is self-contained, and you only need to open this up if you need to replace something. But a blade swap, you don't have to do this, okay? So onto the blade, right? You have three main pieces. You have your blade, you have your mover, and these are dirty, so you're going to see some hair. Apologies in advance. I have a beard. But this is all you need, the two screws, and you have your blade. Now, if you had to take yours apart and you're wondering, you know, is my blade dull or anything, you can move it back and forth. You know, feel if there's any like spots where it kind of gets kinked up. Mine doesn't. You can also look, you know, on my blade, you can see quite a bit of wear here. I mean, I use these every day, but I keep them well lubed. Rubbing on that is not a divot in the metal. It's just discoloration. That does imply that at some point they were a little dry. You know, maybe I had gotten out of the shower and they got wet or something when I was trimming. But that should be it. If you want, you know, if you're pulling hair, you can check your teeth just to make sure that none of them are bent, right? That's a tedious process. You might need a loop or magnifying glass. But even though these are dirty, everything should be in good order. My issue and why they were messing around was because that spring no longer had tension, right? Which allows this bottom blade without tension on it, holding it tight against this, right? Like my thumb is right now. It allows this blade to chatter, right? You can almost think of it as moving in and out like this. Obviously that's exaggerated. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, don't ever play around with this piece, right? Do not undo these screws unless you know what you're doing. That's for alignment of the blade. You need an absolutely flat surface to do that. If you've never calibrated a blade like this or adjusted it, I'd recommend not doing it. Take it to somebody who knows what they're doing. You could probably, the same person who can sharpen your blade can also set the alignment, right? And these are a matched pair, right? If you do try to swap this to another piece, there's very high likelihood that you're not going to have alignment. Okay, so that's enough about the blade. What we're going to talk about now is putting it together, and this is literally the simplest thing we're going to do today. You take this, right? You'll see how it's set up here. Let me see if I can get some, yeah. You'll see what that setup looks like, right? You literally, this little notch right here goes on this white plastic piece right here. That notch lines up, right? You're going to have some tension on it. You hold your thumb there while you do it, right? And we're just going to give her some screws. Now, I might rock the camera again because I'm working over the top of it, but I'm going to put one screw in here. Now, the thing that you can't even see, I'm blocking you. Anyway, all I'm doing is tightening screws. Be a little cautious if you only tighten one at a time. And that's because, remember, that blade is under tension because of that spring. And, you know, it can move around on you. So just be cautious with that. But you just tighten those up, right? And that's it. We're back together. So I'm gonna go ahead and plug in this bad boy. All right, so we're plugged in. You can hear nice and quiet like they should be, and they work like a champ. All right, that's how you fix most wall detail, or most wall trimmers are pretty much the same. Obviously they do have some different designs, but I wanted to go through the old style, right, with these metal screw retainers, and the new style, what the differences were and what to look out when you're replacing it. As always, if you have any comments or questions, let me know down in the comments. And that's it. Hopefully this was helpful. If so, give it a like. Obviously all of my videos aren't specific to barbering or trimmer repair, but check out some of my other stuff. You might find something interesting. Until then, we will see you later.